Alright, back to usual flip throughs after adventure books. Gonna go through the Game Master Guide for Pathfinder. Now, this is the first edition one, and the second edition has since come out for Pathfinder. So I do have a lot of first edition books for Pathfinder. I've I do have the second edition Game Master Guide for Pathfinder, and for some reason I find this one better because in my opinion, it gives much more like adventure and guidelines for campaigns and NPCs and stuff like that, versus the second edition one. The second edition one gives more, in my from what I saw, it gives more variant rules. So of course, to each his own and everything. So I'm sure that there'll be people on both sides of that, like, oh, stick with the first edition. There's be others that'll be like second edition is so much better, because I know, harkening back to when I was playing second edition Dungeons and Dragons, when third edition came out, my friends and I that were playing at the time, we were all like, oh no, third edition is never going to be as good as second edition. But then once we got playing into it, we were like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty good. So Pathfinder is based on the D20 system that third edition was based on. So it pretty much gives in a sense a groundbreak for a lot of the other book RPGs and stuff that came afterwards. So like always, you can see the table of contents to give you like a good guideline of what this whole book is about. So like I said, this is pretty much very with it being based on the D20 and being a fantasy set, and just like D&D, it's very similar to a third edition Dungeons and Dragons. So and of course you always have to start off with the introduction, and so the art always has artwork and stuff in it. So it always starts off each chapter with a artwork and a little excerpt or whatever on for stuff for the campaign. Of course, the glare from my lights is terrible. So, and of course, it gets first part gets into the whole duties of the GM, or the dungeon master. So it gets into the style of play, tone and set, and what kind of a campaign you're running for, horror, Curse of Strahd versus high adventure, Lord of the Rings. So it also talks about group styles. It depends on the type of characters that are playing. And of course, a big thing is retaining interest. Your players are going to want to keep coming. If they are vested in the NPCs, the villains, and if you have boring NPCs and or villains, they're probably not going to want to be retaining interest in it. So of course, it does touch on sensitive topics and everything. So the stuff in the real world tends to bleed over into RPGs and everything, and so you could run campaigns based on those sensitive topics and everything that bring to forefront the ideas that maybe plague our times type of deal, or the ideas that plague maybe historical times or whatever. So, and it keeps going into further details. So a number of players you can see finding players, that's always probably the hardest part of finding any group, not just for Pathfinder or a D&D, but any group. So finding people that can play on a regular basis and everything. So yeah, it has a whole campaign guide. So it goes from system, setting, voice, in a sense you become a voice actor once you become a GM, story, and of course it does give publications and stuff and everything, so that, and ideas for other media that you can use. And as you can see, like I said, each chapter has a little artwork and a little excerpt and everything that you can read, that kind of gives a brief description of each chapter. So and so basically second chapter, how to run the game, so it goes into further detail, and I guess it's concepts of in character versus out of character. So sometimes you might be in the middle of a session and something comes up, someone gets an important phone call or something, so you have to step out of character, then you can get back into player. and like tracking for stats and like for combat and stuff like that. It's like and it goes into pretty much in depth on like everything. So, and it gives you whole like ideas of the art of the game master, and so like it gives you even more concepts than that, and like and of course like also has the part on like the science, like kind of like techniques and stuff that go like dice rolling and stuff like that, and of course it gives you like ideas on like a linear adventure, like you go from point A all the way down to point B and everything, versus like a non-linear, you start to like kind of expand further outwards. So like linear would be great for like one shots, and of course the ultimate non-linear adventure, and like you can see like many different pathways that you can take into like the same conclusion and everything. So like the non-linear adventure is pretty much the ultimate like open world type of campaign that you want. So like of course like always I'm going to say that you always want to plan for like contingencies, because like even if you have like your whole story laid out, chances are like people are going to go right instead of left, and that way you kind of have to like be able to like improvise to be able to get back on track and everything. So like also gets into like a concept of high and low challenge rating, CR challenge rating encounters, lets you play to PC strengths and everything. So like another concept would be like also weaknesses is like play to like where people can overcome their weaknesses and everything. So, and of course has the artworks of the infamous Dice Goblin. Everyone who's ever played D&D or Pathfinder knows the infamous Dice Goblin. So it gets into like maybe you have like a broken game where things are like too like overpowered. So like it gets into like the things like you can see here, like it talks about like too much treasure, and like when PCs miss a clue, and of course sometimes like especially like with Warhammer, that people familiar with Warhammer, where things are like so overpowered. So like and it gives you different considerations to go through for like game changers and stuff like that. So like this goes through like and of course it goes through all that. And of course like it wouldn't be complete without like actual tables. So like plot, you can see here like the plot tables. So like a concept of like D100, so like you can do the either pick or choose going down through this whole like idea table, or you can just roll and like have a table where you can have different plot twists and everything. So like for things to go sideways, and like and of course like items and stuff like that, and like maybe like add the extraordinary stuff that kind of will pop up and everything. So like these tables are always great, because it gives you like a great base to be able like to build off of, and like with the cultural titles, of course, it gives like real world ideas that you can in sense incorporate into like your campaign and everything. So from like as you can see, like you can use like a Scandinavian type or Spanish Spartan to like an Indian, Italian, different tiles and like stuff that you can use for like your monarchies and stuff. So like you can give it kind of like a real world flavor. So and then get into like chapter 3. As you can see, it's all about the player characters, and every chapter is like this, like I'll reiterate. So it gets this one gets into like the whole concept of like the characters. So like starting characters, like you start off maybe with like a low level villain that they fight off, and then it talks about like the group composition, like whether you have like the typical fighter, cleric, rogue, and wizard, or like get into like stuff that's like different types of characters that like maybe like the non-classical. So like instead of a cleric, you're doing a druid. Instead of a wizard, you're doing a sorcerer. Instead of a fighter, you have a barbarian. Instead of rogue, you might have a bard. So it also gets like into like a quick excerpt on like character backgrounds, and goes even into further detail, and like of course also gives you the idea of like introducing new players. So maybe like you're having a campaign with 4 people, and like a fifth fifth person wants to join. So like you can like find ways to introduce them and everything. So and gets into like the life of a party. So like maybe you have all the shared past, the gathering group, and like the ideas on how they came across, and like maybe they became friends in the past, or this is their first time getting together. So like gets into like the party composition that I mentioned earlier. So like of course it also deals with like dealing with limitations, like handling treasure, and of course like it gets into like a death of a hero, which like tends to happen too. So like what and also gets into like alignment, so like you can, if you have a house rule where you don't use it, you don't have to, or like but it is typical to use alignment for guidelines. Gets into like evil characters, and of course it gives you like different type ideas for player interactions, like the whole like background type of like in a sense concepts that like in a sense character traits that like people in the real world tend to have and everything. So like and it goes into further detail on like all of them. So then like chapter 4 is pretty much non-player characters, and of course like always the glare from my lights is terrible. Probably gonna have to fix that one day. So, and then yet another little excerpt that they have to kind of introduce the chapter. So yeah, it starts off with like the cast of characters, like all the NPCs that you may come across, like the innkeeper, the town of the captain of the guard, his guardsmen, the king, the nobles, and like gets into good to read, good to play. So like always good to read stuff on stuff, and so like gives you like the basics and stuff, and like of course gives you like pictures of like good types of like NPCs that you could quite possibly come across, and so like making NPCs unique and everything, so that way you're not coming across like the same pretty much like an innkeeper every single time, or like maybe every king is different, every duke is different, and so you get all goblins, and so and like yes into life of NPC, because like a lot of times like NPCs have lives outside of the PC's story arc. So like when the heroes go off to adventure and they come back, like the NPCs aren't just sitting around, and the innkeeper wasn't just sitting behind the bar all the time. He was actually maybe going out and getting supplies for his inn, getting ready for like the next night or something. So like it does have like also the typical like NBC classes that you were first introduced in third edition. So like the adept, aristocrat, expert, warrior. So basically, like a powered down versions of the PC classes that like most NPCs you come across, and of course, also it wouldn't be like complete without your villains as well. So like it gives you a whole ideas of like whether you do a crime lord, like maybe you're going up against like a thieves guild or something, the evil overlord. What comes to mind is maybe like a mind flayer that you could use. The evil priest, maybe you're going up against the corrupt church type of deal. Mad wizard, sort of like the Dungeon the Mad Mage adventure book that I just recently went over. So it gives you a whole ideas for that as well, and goes even into further detail of advanced villainy, and so and of course gives you whole backgrounds on like NPC backgrounds. So like recovering addict, childhood playmate of somebody important, escaped slave, failed priest, failed merchant. So it gives you ideas like so you can like in essence create even more unique NPCs, and of course like using the innkeeper when he's not sitting on his rump when the PCs go out to adventure, he's doing stuff outside to run his inn. So like it also has like goals that you can like have in your NPCs. So like maybe they're, as you can see, like learn to gamble, and then they got, or maybe go on a pilgrimage, find a better job. So like your NPCs also have goals just like your PCs and everything. So like it gives you a table for characteristics, personality characters, physical personality characteristics, and of course it gives a whole list of like different occupations that you can give your NPCs, and of course, like this is the table from the previous page, going further detail and everything. So this one is definitely in depth and everything. So like NPCs also have secrets, just like the PCs. You can do rewards for heroic deeds. So maybe like as you can see here, further down the list, maybe like they become your follower, become your squire, or it's like maybe you end up getting married or whatever in game. So that there's always that possibility. So like, and of course, random and adventure party name generator. So for those that are trying to make like NPCs up on the fly, like all of a sudden like the PCs come across like that innkeeper, and then like you have to make a name up on the fly. It gives you like a table to be able to do that and everything. So like this is why the GM guidebook is always great for like a tool for the GM. So it gives you more like ammunition to run the game. So chapter 5 is good old rewards. So, and like always, like previous and the upcoming chapters has like a little excerpt that you can read and everything to kind of get into like the idea of the whole chapter. So, and of course it gets into the role of rewards like experience, gold, and like maybe prestige, because a lot of times if you don't have that dangle that little reward in front of the PCs, they may not necessarily want to get involved in everything. So, and of course it gives you kind of like concepts on how to like run or give out rewards and everything. So, and of course like the artwork is like as you can see, have been seen throughout the whole book, is slightly different than like your D&D artwork, but like it's still, in my opinion, still good, if not better. So, and of course like he talks about the treasure, magic items, and of course like that, which is always a big part of the game. Of course, troubled items could also be like quite often cursed items. So like it does come into the idea of like story items. So like maybe you have like a ring or like a helmet or something that's pivotal to the story that you're running. So like of course with the upcoming like Eve of Ruin, which stars Vecna, the idea of like a story related items would be the eye and hand of Vecna type of deal. So it goes this chapter goes into further ideas of like starting treasure. So maybe you start off with like an heirloom idea, maybe like your PC is like a fighter and he's a quested knight, and he has like a set of armor and sword and shield and everything that's been passed down. So, like what comes to mind is like a Stern Brightblade from the Dragonlance campaign setting or the Chronicles. Maybe you're like someone like him who got like his armor and sword handed down through generations, having being a knight of Solamnia. Plot items getting an idea of like the hand and eye of Vecna that I mentioned, and of course mighty items would probably be like your artifacts that like maybe your deck of many things type of deal, something that like isn't necessarily common, but you can come across and be able to use. And of course, it covers both the characters, and then it goes in the whole description of what is a treasure, and gives like the different questions that you can ask as a GM or DM, and of course like non-adventure and magic items, so like your daily mundane day-to-day stuff. So like this chapter pretty much goes into real detail on the whole idea of treasure, and of course like the magic items like scrolls, wands, and like you have like your tables for like all the different items that you can get, armor, shields, weapons, materials, like even special materials like you can see here, like dragon hide and different types of metals. And of course like the tables are like pretty in-depth, because like the type of like different items you can make are probably like in the millions if not billions of different combinations you can make and everything. So that's what this whole chapter is all about, and quickly going through all these long tables for like the spells and scrolls that you can do, and it's by level. And then like actually then get into chapter 6, is pretty much like creating a world. So if you're one of those people that doesn't want to use a pre-made campaign set like the Forgotten Realms, you can actually make your own. So, and it always has that little uh, excerpt that you can get into before the chapter, and gets into good old world building. You define your set and tools of the trade. Like you can use computer systems, you can use paper and draw it out. It's like maybe you want to start small, building the city, and then work out there. Like when world building, maybe campaign building as well. Start off small and build out and everything, and then like as you run more campaigns, you build out your world as you go type of deal. Or you could start off building the whole world and then like have your adventure parties explore them as you go and everything. And of course, the geography, starting size, the hierarchies, gives pretty much this whole chapter gives you like all you need to basically build the world that you would be running into. So, and it gives you different society ideas and everything. So you could run different types, like just like the real world. You could like in a sense run a campaign in feudal Japan versus medieval Europe versus like modern day Africa or something. So like and of course you also get into technology. So you could run a steampunk type of campaign, or you could do like the Spelljammer, where it uses time kind of space travel technology and fantasy settings. So you also need to consider the time role time plays. It gives like the cosmos, and of course like your planar travel, like to the elemental planes, the astral plane, the planes of like heaven and hell type of deal, and like also gives you ideas for doing like a parallel worlds, like kind of like the multiverse type of deal, sort of like what the MCU is doing right now. And of course, Chapter 7 gets into adventures, and so like you got like another little excerpt as well. And so this gives you whole ideas of elements of adventuring, plus the usual artwork, and like you can use it gives you ideas for symbols for like map building for your actual dungeons. And so like it goes even into depth on like resting in the dungeon type of deal, so when you're not always running back and forth to town like, every time you get hurt or something, or you need to rest up, you can do that. And of course it gives you tables on like where to find dungeons, the types of dungeons that you can find. So like for instance, like right here, like a living iron maze would be one of them. Giant hourglass slowly filling sand. So it gives you ideas out of the ordinary for these tables that you might necessarily come up on your own. So like and of course it gives you even more tables for like characteristics for the rooms, like exotic rooms, mundane rooms, and 100 pieces of minor major dungeon dressing. So basically everything from like you can see like a hand mirror forge, the horseshoe furnace. So of course you'd also want to put stuff that makes sense. So you wouldn't put like in a sense blacksmith and stuff in like a kitchen or something. So it would have to also make sense where you put that stuff as well. And of course it gives you different ideas for like different like goblin den, dragon's lair. Gives you different ideas for different types of dungeons where you'd find different types of monsters and everything. So it gets you into like the planes that I mentioned earlier, so you can run like the multi planes, or like the multiverse type of deal, like I mentioned. So like this book is probably like valuable for DMs, because it gives you all these great tables and ideas and stuff to be able to run a campaign set. And so like then the best bet is like have some of these tables like with your DM screen and have them ready, so that way you can come up with stuff on the fly for when things do pop up out of the ordinary. So like and you can see here it gets into like taverns as well. So this really goes in depth into like all the different aspects that you can see in what you run across in the campaign set. And of course like you can see like this settlement statistics. So of course the glare is terrible here, and it gives you different types of like sizes of towns, and like qualities, like damage, like face value, or like a whole idea on like how much you can be able to buy and like meet people and stuff like that. And so like it gives like a quick view of like maybe like a large town or like a small city right here that you could run into. And of course, like it also gives you a table on like the available magic items, because like sometimes like in like a Thorpe, small like village, you wouldn't necessarily come across like a lot of like as good at magic items as you could in like the metropolitan area. So like you can see like here in the Thorpe, you can't come across like a major item, but in like the metropolitan area, you could and everything. So it gives you like a kind of a stat block for that. And then of course it gives you like a sample settlement, so like that way you can kind of quickly pull and plug on the different aspects of like the different types of towns. And of course it gives you like a whole new like more tables for like the different types of stuff you come across, like shops, decorations that you see, locations, everything you need come across in like a major city. And so like of course like you also have different types of like adventures like in water, fire. You could do like elementals. So like and then this where it gets into water, it's all about like pretty much like I think Pirates of the Caribbean. So like you're sailing on ships and stuff. Maybe you become a privateer yourself or a pirate, or then you get into the wilderness aspects of stuff. And of course it gives you like tables for the different types of wilderness that you'd be able to adventure in as well. And so then of course it also like chapter 8 gets into advanced topics, and then the usual excerpt that it has for that chapter. And so this one lets you like get into like like I said, the advanced ideas. So like it gives you like tables kind of like a run through like, okay, this is what happens, like run like DCs for like the different like skills abilities type of deal, like maybe doing a chase and everything. So you see like the progression of like checks that you do and everything, like across chase across the rooftops or something. And so like it also deals with disasters. So maybe you could use like a disaster as like a campaign set and like to set off an adventure type of deal, like in a sense like real world disasters. And of course gets into like topics of drugs and addiction. So you don't necessarily need to do stuff like this for games, but this chapter definitely gives you ideas on like using real world ideas to put into your fantasy set and everything. So, and that's what like the whole advanced concepts or topics are all about and everything. So good old puzzles and riddles. Think of like Bilbo and Gollum when they first meet in the Hobbit. And then of course like we rounded out with like the whole NPC gallery, which like gives you even more tables to like run like different types of NPCs, and it gives you like a whole ideas for like the different types of like NPCs that you in a sense come across through like your whole adventures and everything. So it gives you like again quick base that you can just kind of pick and plop and stuff for people that you can come across, like if you're looking for something on the fly and like you need to make something up quick, or like use in advance to kind of like flesh out your campaign beforehand, so like you're even more well prepared and everything for every type of eventuality that could happen in the campaign set and everything. So that's what this whole chapter is all about and everything. So, and we're pretty much coming to the end of it. And so like as you can see, like the NPCs, it gives you like a whole slew of different NPCs for different ideas for like different types of like from the city to the wilderness to like the underbelly to the upper nobility to like just about like anybody you could quite possibly come across, not just in campaign setting, but like you could quite possibly come across in like real life as well. So like you could use those like interchangeably as well. So like ideas are endless. And so like it always ends with the appendix where like it gives you like a kind of like a rundown of like different ideas and stuff and everything for like recommended literature references and stuff where you can look into to kind of expand like your stuff. And of course I don't think any campaign would be complete without playing the music and stuff in the background. And of course, you've got like good sheets that you can use as a DM for like all your information, so you could quickly photocopy this and fill them out for like all your stuff that you'll be running for that session and everything. So this is pretty much the whole book for the Game Master's Guide for Pathfinder. Of course, this is the first edition version, and the second edition is now out and everything. So like eventually I'll probably will get into the second edition stuff of this after I go through a bunch more, so that way I can do like a compare and contrast. And of course, by the time I get through all that, it'll be time to move on to other stuff as well. So here is the first, at least the first edition of the Game Master's Guide for Pathfinder.